that allow and foster your continued creation of our world. Lastly, bless this committee in the months ahead. May they continue to call this community to understand and call forth the justice every person and every part of creation longs for and deserves. We ask these blessings through the life and teaching of the Just One, Jesus, who truly lives and now reigns with you in the sublime unity of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
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 Thank you, Father.
You're welcome.
Peggy's
Am I
good.
frozen?
No, you're good.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
Your
you all.
God.
And I apologize for starting recording, but I wanted to get your prayer on there. So at least we got part of it. I think I'm frozen again.
But
I was going to read the Piscataway. Oh, you can hear? Okay, well then
We
I'm going to
can
read the
hear you
Piscataway.
okay.
So we are
Yeah.
gathered on Thank you. We are
Wow.
gathered on the unceded land of the Piscataway peoples. I ask that you join me in acknowledging the Piscataway community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. We acknowledge that this country was founded upon exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples, including those on whose land St. Vincent's is located. This acknowledges and demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism.
Thank you.
And I think I'm frozen.
Yeah, but we can hear you.
Yeah. I can
Okay,
see your
so-
lips.
I can hear you.
Well, anyway, we're going to turn it over to Joan because she's going to lead us in a PowerPoint tonight to assist us. And we'll
thought-
also talk a little bit later about South Baltimore Community Land Trust and an opportunity to help them. And Father's already said the prayer. So Joan, it's all yours.
Did Father Ray want to say something? I thought
I thought Father Ray was going to start.
Father, that's right. Father, did you want to? I didn't know if that was.
I'm only catching every other word, so I don't know what you just said.
So I think it was about, did you want to say something because you thought you were going to leave early? Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, because I think part of the reason, and has not been easy for me, but I've been withdrawing from committees, etc., because the conversations now are about the future and with the parish, and I'm not going to be there. So I'm very cognizant about that and whether I should be actively contributing to what is being looked forward to in terms of the future. My hope is that Father Evan will become actively involved around these issues. So it was kind of like a farewell to all of you. Well, some of you I'll see on Sunday this week and next week, so it's not that. So there were a number of things that I wanted to say to all of you. One is how deeply grateful I am. These have been probably, in all of my experience at the parish, some of the most interesting, important, and thoughtful conversations that we've had. I've learned a great deal, and I've been happy that I've been able to participate. I think in trying to look at what I would hope for you as you move ahead, keep the spirit that fostered the beginning of this committee. I want you to be questioners, but questioners not only of other people's positions, but of your own positions. There is this capacity on the part of we human beings, or maybe I'm only talking about myself, to eventually think that my position is the right position. And I know that there is always the need to be willing to question oneself, because that clarifies and oftentimes enriches in ways that become powerful in terms of the actions that, in this case, this committee takes. And I think that's one of the great losses in terms of our national dialogue, is there isn't this willingness to be questioned. And I think we all see how deeply impacted our country is at this particular point. So be infinitely curious, and raise questions, even the most difficult and complicated ones. It can only lead in good places. The other thing I wanted to share was, as you continue and perhaps even expand what you do as a committee, I want you, not just theoretically to stay connected to the principles of Catholic social teaching, but to use them. Okay. They're powerful, and they do merit our thoughtfulness and, in fact, our questioning, in order to open them up so they might have the opportunity to reveal what they have the capacity to reveal. And I believe that the work of this committee, if it arises out of and stays faithful to that ever deeper exploration of the principles of Catholic social teaching, you guys are going to do such really, really, really good work. If I think there's something that I would hope that there could be, and I don't want to say there hasn't been effort, because I know there has been, but how to communicate even more effectively to the broader St. Vincent, well, what will be the St. Leo, the great community. And that's a whole new arena for you. People that have no idea what this committee is about, and maybe have not thought about the kinds of issues that are explored here with the kind of depth and breadth and therefore commitment as this committee has. So I think the continual challenge is, how do you take what is explored here and bring it to the community in as powerful way as possible, that it precipitates more people participating, but at minimum makes people more thoughtful and more engaged around these issues in the public arena. So those would be the things. And of course, I'll keep you in my prayers.
We
Perfect.
truly appreciate it, Father. And if you'd like to stay on for the presentation Joan is doing, Rerum Novarum, you're welcome to. And
Wonderful,
we appreciate
Rerum.
your comments, whether it's for the future or not. We always appreciate them. In fact, I wouldn't mind if you ever get a chance to listen to that Georgetown University thing on the racism. I'd love your feedback on anything you think we could do to punch that out, because that silence is complicity, and we really need to be addressing it. So we appreciate it, and we have already chatted, Jody and Skip and I, about how we might address this committee with St. Leo. So we'll
Yeah,
try to
good.
keep on top of that also. But anyway, thank you so much. We truly appreciate your support throughout these many years. So
Yes.
Well, one last thing
Absolutely.
I forgot. Thank you for tolerating me. There are moments when absolutely you have had to tolerate me, and I'm deeply appreciative of that as well.
No, we
Never.
have been incredibly appreciative to have you with us, Father Ray.
My privilege.
And thank you also for all the wonderful prayers that you've provided for us. They were wonderful ways to open our meetings. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm grateful that Peggy would ask me to do them, because I found that just creating those prayers has made me think more deeply. And so that's been a gift from all of you. So thank you.
Awesome.
We
Now
never
move on to Joan, please.
Well, we never thought you were obtrusive. We know we got political and made you uncomfortable at times, and it was very difficult not to get political. And we're really trying to focus on CST and not the politics of it. So anyway,
But we'll give Father a
No. Move on to
Yes,
Joan.
we want
You got
to.
important things to do.
all right, it's all about you now, Joan.
Yay.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can share, huh?
I have every confidence in you.
the new grandmother.
Yeah.
Yes,
So exciting.
it is so exciting.
Perfect.
You got it.
Now, that good?
Yes.
Good.
Okay, all right. So, obviously, you can see from the title, Pope Leo the 13th and Rerum Novarum, and the relevance to today. And the reason that this came about was because during our last meeting, we started into the action phase, right? Trying to think about, well, what do we do and how do we think about what is happening? And couldn't help but then reflect a little bit about Pope Leo the 14th and the fact that he took the name Pope Leo, and then thinking about, well, it goes back to really what you'll see I have down as the Magna Carta of Catholic social teaching, and Rerum Novarum being a part of that. So I said, with the help of many people in terms of sending me additional information, I said I'd be willing to sort of present this, and then hopefully this will lead into some discussion afterwards. So that's how I got here. And so I thought I would start just by telling us and talking a little bit about Pope Leo the 13th. And he was Pope from 1878 to 1903. He was born, that's his name, however it's pronounced, in Carpineto Romano in 1810. He was educated by the Jesuits, and he was ordained a priest in 1837. He sort of, I think his health was not the best even then, and he went into diplomatic services. And initially it started out going to Naples and then Perugia, and then eventually he was appointed as the nuncio in Brussels. He didn't last there very long. It was only 3 years. I guess Leopold the King didn't really like him, so he sort of sent him back, and so the reason was because he showed initiative and independence, and so he was recalled at that point. And he was assigned to, and he became Bishop of Perugia, which was actually a step down. It was a demotion, really, but it gave him a chance, and he was there in doing this for quite a while, to reconsider and look at the relations between the church and society. And that had started back in Brussels in terms of understanding that. Because if you think about the history of what's going on, you have the 1848 revolutions going on, there was papal land loss. And so he had a chance to sort of reflect on that. And also he did a lot of studying. So he studied Thomas Aquinas during this time, and he became a cardinal. And he threw himself into his work. Education-wise, he had an interest in technology. He wrote pastoral letters in 1877 to 1878. And that sort of put him on I guess, the trajectory where people could see what he was doing. So people knew, even though it was not the best situation that he was in, well, others began to see what he was doing. And then he was assigned, and I did not write the name of this thing down because I wouldn't be able to pronounce it anyhow, but he took the office of chief administrator of the church in case the Pope died. So that gave him a chance to really be seen by other people. And they must have liked what they saw, because he was elected Pope on the third ballot on February 20th, 1878. And let's see. Sorry, I have to, so I can see. What we have is he had a dedication really to a dialogue between the church and the world. And that came out in 14 encyclicals, and they were social encyclicals. The first one was on socialism, but the one that we know about most, right, is Rerum Novarum. And it's an awareness of the problems of the working class. And it was really considered the Magna Carta of modern social teaching. And it was brought on because of the challenges of industrialization that were happening. So what is it? It addressed the conditions of the working class. It was really called On the Conditions of Labor. That's what it was about. And what it did for us is it outlined the role of the state, which was to promote justice through the protection of rights. So that term rights is really important as we get into a little bit more of this. And it also specified what the role of the church was, which was to speak out on social issues, to teach principles. And so essentially it was a criticism at the time of socialism, and it was also a criticism of laissez-faire capitalism. And these are some of the key things that were talked about. The whole idea of cooperation between classes, the rights, the duties of both the capitalists and the workers, the dignity of work. Let me just get to this for a minute. The dignity of work, which was, but also the dignity of the person too. I want to say that. It was primary purpose is to provide for a decent life, and that the worker did not just exist for the sake of the job. Just wage and support, and just wages, and it did support unions. And that was the idea of paying for a decent life and being able to also then organize as a part of that. And then the next piece that I just stressed was the role of the state, which was the idea that the government should watch over people, but only interfere when necessary. And then private ownership of property, which was the fair distribution of property for the advancement of people. And then defense of the poor, which is really the really important piece for us to think about, which was the protection and the needs of the poor. And so what we see here is, key concepts that are really important: the dignity of the person, the dignity of work, the whole idea of the common good really is emphasized throughout this, which is a part of our catechism as well. Respect for human rights, the social well-being and development of people, and then finally stability and peace in terms of that. So this served as a foundation, right? And it serves as a foundation for us today. But what we can see here is that popes after that really did go back to the Rerum Novarum, and they came out with their own documents. So I'm not going to go through these, but you can see in 1931, Pope Pius the 11th, it was the 40th anniversary, right? And then you get down to 1981, Pope John Paul II, and that was the 100th anniversary of Rerum Novarum. So this was our foundation where we really go. And I think the other piece, just to stress, so it's the foundation in terms of our church documents, but it had a big influence from a political perspective too, in terms of the development of parties throughout in countries and political action per se, labor rights. Okay, and then here we are, Pope Leo the 14th, and he took this name, and he said that I chose to take the name Leo the 14th. There are different reasons for this, but mainly because Pope Leo the 13th, in his historic encyclical Rerum Novarum, addressed the social questions in the context of the first great industrial revolution. In our own day, the Church offers to everyone the treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and to the developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. So, and then also he really took the name too, and just from what I read, Pope Leo the 14th had a strong devotion to early church fathers too, Saint Augustine and Pope Leo the First. Leo the Great, I guess. So that leads us then to thinking, what's the relevance of all this to today, right? And excuse me. And in particular, in terms of the big, beautiful bill, which betrays the poor. And the idea, there was an article that came out in the Jesuit Review on June 3rd, which I highly recommend that if you can, I think I sent it to Jody and to Peggy and Skip. So it talks about that the church must oppose this particular bill. And so as we think about it, and I think in terms of the political context, the implications of Rerum Novarum, we think, and not just in terms of this bill, but overall what's been going on really for the past 6 months. Dignity of person, work is important. The loss of federal jobs, huge issue, right? Veterans' loss of many jobs. Mass deportation, that in and of itself could be, we could talk about that for one particular session. Promoting justice through protection of rights, so that right piece is really important. And here it's amazing because in Rerum Novarum, the working conditions of people were addressed. And that, for us, when you take that into our context and our time period, that was NIOSH, right? To give us guidelines in terms of what should happen in terms of working conditions for our people. Well, we're losing tremendously because of the loss of support for NIOSH. Child labor was addressed in Rerum Novarum, believe it or not. And again, that's an issue when you think about the deportation of migrants. I remember seeing something the very first few weeks maybe in March or so, about Florida trying to get new laws for kids to be able to work at a younger age and at night, right, after school for longer periods of time. Healthcare coverage is another important issue in terms of protection of rights. Medicaid. This article said 7.6 million people without healthcare coverage. What we're really seeing now is 13 million, right, in terms of Medicaid. It's a huge issue, huge issue. And then the whole idea of pressing unjustly on the working class, the wretchedness of that, an important principle. And that's being seen in terms of social programs that are being gutted, housing, food, SNAP benefits. And just one of the statistics from that article is, the amount of money that's going to be lost in terms of people. But people are going to get sick, people are not going to do well, right?
Right.
So when you think about all those issues, they're really violations of our Catholic social teaching, and which we go back to preferential options for the poor, we go to solidarity, that all people are interconnected, and we go to common good. All members of society are given the chance to thrive and become members of a community. And when they're not, then we don't have the solidarity or the common good in mind. So I wanted to then share with you, Anne and I actually went to Pentecost rally, Anne, 2 weeks, I can't see you, but 2 weeks ago? This was 1 week ago. Okay. So this was, Anne can talk about this better than I can because she was one that pulled me into it and I didn't even know about the network. But there were many groups represented. There were about 500 people that were represented, religious groups or in some form or fashion, and we walked over to the Senate. We had 4 senators come and talk: Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker, Coons, and Warnock, right? Yeah. And but what we couldn't help but notice is like we need a voice. We need this. We need the solidarity. We need the pulling together. So we did that, and I think that's something to think about in the sense that I'm missing a slide that I wanted to tell you one more thing about. I didn't pull up the right thing. Because what we noticed that day was, okay, where are the clergy? And are they here? Well, an article came out today. I'm going to back up so you don't look at that. And an article came out today that I found, and again, the Jesuit Review. And in that article, they were telling us the fact that the bishops have come out, just so we all know, and they've written a letter to the legislators, and so it's great. I don't have my notes here, but it addresses all these issues that I just brought up in terms of they really address the issues of the food program, the Medicaid issue. They started out by certainly supporting the abortion piece to that, but that was a very small part of the letter. 7 pages of the letter apparently were addressing all these issues that I just talked about. So they've done that letter, but the article from the Jesuit and the reference here, let me see if I can show it to you, is the Reese article right here. Catholic bishops quietly criticize Trump's budget, but they need to get their message out. Jesuit Review, sorry for that typo. And so they're doing it, but the message was to get that message out louder because we don't even know that. It just came about apparently. So with that, I'm going to have everybody open it up for discussion. And Jody, you have the next few slides.
I just have one question. If you could put those links in the chat, that would be great. Okay.
That link, I can see that art. Oh, I don't know if I
Yeah,
can do
yeah.
that.
You know what?
You just copy and paste it.
Or we can send out the whole slideshow.
Which would be fine. I
That's great.
apologize because I had a few more slides with this newest thing that I just found today. So I'll get the right one pulled up. Because those 2 articles in the Jesuit Review, I think were really good. The first one was really criticizing. The second one was saying, well, the bishops are doing things, but they need to be louder. And that means that we need to be louder, right? I think that's what that
Right.
means.
I'd like to just make one comment on the history of Rerum Novarum. It was Cardinal Gibbons, with his tremendous support for the Knights of Labor, and him convincing Leo the 13th that this was a valid organization. And he really was a little tutelage of Leo and for the purposes of labor.
Wow.
The Knights of Labor were considered socialists and all this good stuff, and they were trying to kill that. But it was Gibbons who had a profound influence on Leo the 13th.
Wow, that's
How
pretty
about that?
impressive. That's great.
Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting you mentioned, Joan, that about Leo the First, and I mean, he's one of the church fathers, and evidently one of the things that he was known for was a profound commitment to human dignity.
Yeah. Yep. And Pope Leo the 13th took his name because of Pope Leo the 12th, and because of really his commitment too to some of these same principles. So they sort of are just following in line and really following.
The history of the Leos.
Yeah.
So kind of tying in our racism history that we've studied so much, beginning with the papal bulls, and I always go back to Martin Luther King Jr.'s comment from prison about the anesthetizing stained glass windows that kept the hierarchy and the church from speaking out. And so this letter that they sent, it seems like it gives permission to speak out, but what does it take to get it from the pulpits, pro-life included? I mean, everything that's in there that you mentioned is so powerful. And what does it take to have that coming out?
They seem to write the letter out into the ether, but they do not say to the bishops, have this read from the pulpit of every church.
Amen.
Because I would
Yes.
be really surprised if, I mean, I think there are a lot of Catholics who, if the bishop said so, then maybe we should adjust our thinking, but they don't know that this has been done. And I think that is also true of some of the other letters, I think of racism and other things that the bishops have written that never trickled down.
Mm.
That's an excellent point, Mary Ann. I think sometimes they think that the letter suffices that
Yeah.
they've said, but they've also got to help push through to
Push
the
it.
action end of
You
it.
can, Catholics.
Can I
Well-
just mention this so we can get rid of it so we can see everybody? Yeah, because this will just take 1 second. People had asked last time about the USCCB and what ways you could take action. So these are just 3 slides really quickly of, this is what it looks like if you go to USCCB, if you just Google that. And when you open their website, if you see those links across the top, one of them says issues in action. And then if you go down and do the take action, and then Joan, can you just go to the next slide and then we'll get these off the screen. And then when you do take, this becomes the action center. And like, this is just the first one. There's all kinds of them down below. Tell Congress, this first one said, tell Congress to protect Medicaid and SNAP. And but there's a whole list of them. And then if you click on one of those, and now the next slide, then you'll get this kind of thing where there's actually already a typed message. You can add your own message, which I would strongly suggest. As you can see, this is mine, so that's why it's going to Senator Warren and Senator Markey, because those are my Massachusetts ones. But it's a longer thing. You can add what you want, and you can send it to the people that you want to. So anyway, there's actions that you can take if you just go to the USCCB website.
But
That's all I wanted to say.
people are not gonna come, the ordinary, if there are such things, Catholic layperson is not gonna know to go to that. It's so helpful to have that, and thank you for showing it to us. But, you know, from the pulpit, that may need to
Absolutely.
be disseminated. So
Exactly.
I'm sorry, Ray, you had your hand up and I'm,
No, I just wanted to say that tonight at about 5 o'clock, they came out, well, Catholic bishops came out with about 7 or 8 articles, and it starts with make your voice heard on the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And it goes on to talk on taking action to support the most vulnerable. It's excellent because it goes into about 7 different articles and does have that 7-page article that's addressed to the representatives, the Senate, and the like. So it's about 7 or 8 pages, but again, it goes to the senators. It does not go to the parishioners. So if we got 50% parishioners in favor of Trump and 50% against, the U.S. Catholic bishops have to take what they have and strongly say we're against this and see if they can in some way or another infiltrate and make more Catholics against the big beautiful bill and the like. Not think they're not reading this and going this for Trump policy and the like. I think sending it to the representatives is great. And again, there's one in here actually from Pope Leo the 14th, and it's in the OSV News. And it says advocating for the vulnerable against harms in the One Big Beautiful Act. It's a beautiful article. I've never heard that newsletter before, but it's really has the Pope 14th comments and the like. So if you get a chance, just start out with U.S. Catholic bishops, and the latest, the one that was sent today at 5 o'clock, and that has a slew of articles along these lines. Again, putting forth, peace and justice phrases and things like that, but sending it to the representatives. And I had sent 2 weeks ago when they came out with the Maryland bishops on the use of artificial intelligence. I sent a letter to Archbishop Laurie encouraging him to have that read in all the parishes in Baltimore and to be mindful of the big beautiful bill and oppose it. And actually come out and say, I oppose it in order to get Catholics thinking about the fact that this is going to ruin the poor and the vulnerable among us. So this article today just came out. Might want to just take a look at, but I think we have to reach the Catholic public more than just the House of Representatives.
Yeah. Thank you,
That's
Ray.
it.
And I know Father's had his hand raised for a while.
Yeah, just a few quick things. One is, this is just Mary Ann brought up about, the bishops, requiring the bishops to make that information known. You need to know that when the USCCB was formed, none of the things that are said there are binding upon all the bishops. So it's up to each bishop to take what takes place. So it has no juridical power at all. It can't tell the other bishops what to do
Right, right.
simply because of the canonical status of bishops. That said, I think what becomes important, and I'll take my lumps because I probably have been negligent. We really need to encourage every Catholic should be going to the USCCB website with regularity. It just is really critically important. Even if you disagree with a particular position that's posted, it does invite some thoughtfulness and hopefully begins to see some interrelationship between the various issues and hopefully rooted deeply in Catholic social teaching. There are two conundrums I have around the big, beautiful bill. One is I never, ever see a quote when anyone argues about the issues that we need to be concerned about. I never see a quote from the actual bill. And I think that's a loss to see the actual quote from the bill. And then the argument, I think, puts it in a very different place. So that's one of my frustrations. And I understand the bill's over 700 pages long, and I can't go
Yes.
through it to find those points. So I think that's a critical issue. The second one is we want to change people's minds. And so I think one of the discussions needs to be, how do we change other people's minds about these specific issues as they come up? And I think that requires a real understanding of why the people who support it, so that we can speak with some, they sense that we understand their position, but then in understanding it, we may be able to open doors for them to be able to have not a different, but to think more broadly about it and perhaps come to a different position. So I think in terms of really addressing the issue of the big, beautiful bill, I think those two pieces are just critically important. And I'm not seeing a lot of information on either one of those. Now, I'm not the best read person in the world. It may be there and I've missed it. But I think those are two critical issues. Thank you.
Yeah, what's sad for me is having seen hearings, excerpts from Senate hearings, and having legislators on the Republican side admit that they have not read the bill.
Right. That they voted for.
They voted for it, but they did not, so in terms of even their ability to pull up quotes and said, this is what we really mean, here is the quote, they seem unable to do that, which is very sad.
Seems like the bishops must have read a lot of it in order to come out with that letter, because it addresses so many of the issues that at least we've heard on the news about SNAP and Medicaid. And so, I mean, somebody
Well,
must have read some of them.
Right. So read that 7-page letter because I think it's an excellent letter.
Yeah, it is. I mean, even though the USC, it's not binding on the bishops, the Archbishop could ask all of his pastors to do something, couldn't he?
Oh,
Right.
sure, absolutely.
I think that's where we have to come in, Peggy.
Exactly.
When we
That's-
talk about our letters and all.
That's where we need to focus.
Father, you gave me a really good historical perspective on things. I I well remember Cardinal Sheehan, who was such an outstanding advocate for civil rights. And during his time in the archdiocese, the urban priests were very, very active, and nuns. They were really at the forefront of the civil rights movement. And I'll never forget, I would happen to be at St. Vincent's when I was deacon, and the pastor invited all the urban pastors to come for refreshments, and the cardinal to come and be with the urban pastors. And one of the things that came out in the meeting was that Sheehan had done a magnificent job standing up, being in the forefront. And I think this is the reason he got the red hat from Paul VI, and really taking the heat, being booed when he supported the open housing bill and so forth. But what the priests in the inner city had to point out to him was, your message of support is not getting through to the Black community as strongly as you believe, because all the means you're using are not necessarily the means of the Black community at large. You know, you're not in the Afro. You're not a visible presence in the Black churches. And Sheehan was sort of stung by it. But it's part of all of this is, as you said, Father, doing the homework and knowing what's missing, what are the missing pieces, where are we not communicating. And I think when we realize it, from the bishops, some of whom choose not to do it, to the bishops who choose to do it, but not all the pastors, unless they're really given strong directive, do it, you begin to see the constant fallout and fall down until the dedicated do it, the not so dedicated do less.
So the article that was sent out tonight, again, it says, make your voice heard on the one big, beautiful bill. Take action to support the most vulnerable. That's not too much to ask bishops to take that message to the priests. In the article, America, one of the points they make was, unless we defeat this bill and this bill goes on with all the ramifications it has, we may not have a church in the near future, a church that we know that stands up for peace and justice and for the poor and vulnerable. So it's a lot is at stake here.
Yeah. I think one thing that helps that, I don't know, every time you hear a specific example that's personal or very exact, it changes the picture of things. And I've had so many people, it seems like, say that they don't think there's systemic racism. And there was a great example in that University of Georgetown presentation where a woman gave a very specific example of that there was sewage in the yards of this town in Alabama, and then one of the Biden programs had like changed that. And now one part of the bill that's coming out is would take that away, and they would be back to having sewage in their backyard. I mean, just a specific example, but people literally think that there isn't systemic racism, that decisions that were made, and she did talk about like when those decisions were made and why that community didn't get sewage like everybody else got it. So that was a decision that was made. And just concrete examples like that, you know, when you get a chance, and I'm not saying, but even those type of examples could be from the pulpit. But just when talking to people, I find that those, you know, when Peggy tells me about the people at Social Security in Baltimore, that how they lost their job, you know, it's so personal that you see it differently than when you see the statistics, 1,000 people have lost their jobs. So I don't know, just those personal stories I feel like are important to start sharing more and more. And they're not even, you know, I'm not necessarily saying, oh, this is horrible or that's horrible. You're telling a story. And I don't know, I still go back to the allegiance has to be to Jesus Christ and not to a political party. And maybe the more we just trying to keep that focus, may help.
Well, and it's not even enough to say it from the pulpits, really, because our church pews are pretty empty in a lot of places. So
Yeah.
saying it to legislators in all the states and and the news, and I mean, there's so much misinformation and disinformation, and a lie travels way further than the truth and is much more believed. And so there's just a lot to do. But yes, I think that we do need to definitely hear it from the clergy, and because some that will influence some people.
I was really touched by that, and thank you, Anne, by that Pentecost rally. And I think, that was inspiring. It was inspiring to see an ecumenical group of people really come together on this too. So I think the ecumenical piece is maybe another aspect to think about. And and if you look at civil rights, I mean, that's how that happened too, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
And that slide you showed where it was Catholics, for, I forget now, but it made me think because I went to the protest Saturday and I didn't think about identifying myself and saying I'm a Catholic. That's, my sign just said hate will not make us great. But identifying myself as that I'm a Catholic that believes this and stands behind, and wants democracy, that maybe that's something that I need to think about.
Yeah, the thing that I keep coming back to when I've been doing these rallies, because the Pentecostal rally was a good one because it was definitely something that Network promoted, and Network is the Catholic Social Justice Lobby on Capitol Hill. However, there were no Catholic clergy there identifying themselves as Catholic clergy. There was people from Network who aren't clergy, and yet, there were lots of other congregations and faith communities there. There was Methodist, there was Sojourners, there was Lutheran, there was Pax Christi was there, but again, not, identifiably Catholic.
Zion
Yeah.
was there strong.
Yep. So the Baptists were there. There was, when we do the repairs of the breach rallies, there's definitely Jewish members, there's Muslim members, but there's no Catholics there, no Catholic clergy. And that angers me that they aren't willing to come and identify themselves that way. It's really sad.
Did the Pope just appoint a bishop down in the Southwest who was going to be accompanying immigrants
Yes,
to
yes.
their hearings or
Yeah.
support them and so
Mhm.
forth, which is a wonderful thing that we need more of.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I just
mean,
saw
is
that
it-
too.
Yeah, is
Wow.
it, I don't know whether, is there fear in, this is not a fair question because Father Ray is here, but in this sense, no, in the sense of why do Catholic clergy seem reluctant to go out? And there are probably as many answers to that as there are Catholic clergy.
Yeah, I think one of the things is, I hope the determination of whether Catholic clergy are there is or not is not dependent on whether they have a collar or not. Because I know, particularly in social justice issues, a lot of Catholic priests show up in cities and not in collars. So I just want to be thoughtful about that. I think one of the challenge, and I'll just talk about me, so I can't talk about other priests. The number of organizations or groups that ask me to be actively involved,
Right.
it's just mind-boggling.
Mm.
And I routinely feel guilty deleting messages from these different groups. I just do not have the time to be able to respond to all of these groups. All of them have very legitimate concerns, and some of them are very, the issues related to the climate are and the environment are pivotally important.
Right.
The world depends on that being addressed. So it's hard, and I don't know the answer to it. Um, yeah, I just don't know the answer to it. I probably have not been, um, I probably could have been more involved with different gatherings, but it's a tough one. That's not an excuse. I want to be really clear. It's just to contextualize a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, and I certainly wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
Oh, I didn't feel on the spot at all.
Okay.
I think what you raise is, I think, is legitimate.
Mhm.
I think there is I think as religious leaders become more and more conservative, I think the issue of political engagement and social justice engagement shifts a little bit. And I don't know that with certitude, but I have a sense that that might be happening. And it probably would be good if we could get some sense, is there a shift, not just within the Catholic Church, but other religious traditions toward a more conservative theological approach, that's having an impact in terms of commitment to social justice in general.
I, going back to comparisons again, I really think, and even working like with Nancy Grassman in education, what the leader considers important enough to put her or his effort behind is a great influence on uh, the people under her or him. And so it's got to be that visible and that strong. Um, because what you were describing is not what was going on with the urban. The urban priests were out there. Suburban priests, not so much. But the urban priests were acting as one, and nuns from all the orders, they were there. But I think that was because the cardinal, he was at the March on Washington. He led a group of priests over the cardinal. I mean, his visibility when it came to social justice and civil rights is what led it and gave other people the courage to stand up to the pressures against him. I mean, wealthy Catholics booed this man. He did it.
Well, I just think it's sad because, there were lots of clergy there with lots of collars, and I kept thinking, okay, can any of these be Roman? But they weren't. They're not. I guess I just don't say that there were Catholic priests who were there and not wearing their collar. I don't believe that's true.
That's fair, and I was raising, just I don't know, obviously, but you were there, and that's disappointing.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Peggy, I just want to come back, but was so fascinating about one of Jody's remarks. All of them were really pertinent, but when she brought us back to the initial issue, the real lack of true belief that there is systemic racism, that's the message we seem unable to really get across, and maybe at any level, because people feel like, well, you've had a black president, the thing is basically busted at the level. No, because so much of what's happening today is a reaction to the fact that we had an Obama. We don't want that again. Um, uh, People really don't believe that the criminal justice system is really operating in two ways. And it's not just color, it's also the way it reacts against the poor and those who don't have the means to afford um, lawyers who are good lawyers, public defenders and all, basically just process the thing through. So they don't really see the caste system of our society, to put it in broader terms.
Yeah,
Can I
I
please, can
almost,
I
oh,
please
sorry.
say something before, can I say something about public defenders? I mean, I know public defenders. I've been taught some things by public defenders, and I can't say public defenders are just, going through some kind of system or whatever. I think they are working as hard as they possibly can to try to get justice. If they're defending somebody, they're doing the best they can. There are a lot of defense attorneys that do pro bono. They work with the public defender's office on panels. They get they're on a panel and they get a number of cases and they don't get paid and they work very hard. And I just want to say, I can't be anywhere where lawyers are, made to feel ashamed. I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate that, Jerry, because I think what I should have said more accurately is they're overwhelmed.
They
Their
are.
their
They
caseload.
are. Yeah.
And so, the result is not from their lack of care or effort, it's the lack of resources that are really there to support. Thank you.
Thanks.
Did anybody read
Thank
that
you.
article today about the guy who was in prison? He was on death row and he was in prison for 30 years and he was found to be innocent. And so he was pardoned or released. I forget how they phrased it. And they asked coming out of the court, they asked, I can't even remember who it was. If anybody remembers, tell me.
Mm.
I don't know if it was it was somebody. And they said, what do you think about that? And he said, they shouldn't have done it or something like it. Here the guy 30 years was in prison. And so that was a politician. That was not somebody in the justice
Legal.
anyway. There's definitely systemic. I'm sorry, Father, go ahead.
No, you were asking about what we can do.
Mhm.
And I said I was going to keep my mouth shut, and typically for me, I didn't. Sorry. I think one of the things, since today's meeting started off with Rerum Novarum, I'm wondering if the committee might want to think of dissecting Rerum Novarum and take really pithy aspects of it, put them out there for the community. I had the whole encyclical put into the newsletter for people to read, but I think I'm not naive enough to believe that everybody read it. Uh,
Mm.
so I'm suggesting maybe the committee would think about taking parts of it and publishing them in the newsletter, but with a bit of commentary and trying and identifying a linkage between what Leo the 13th said in the late 1800s to what is happening in the present moment. I think that would educate more people around Rerum Novarum and where the church really is in terms of social justice, and might actually precipitate some more active engagement with people on issues. So that would be a suggestion I would submit to the committee.
I think
I have
that,
another, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Another suggestion also. Um, for example, DEI, apparently are bad words now. And I think going back to some of the reasons that some of these things were created, I mean, even if it's, let's face it, it was handicapped people, it was, deaf people. I mean, there were so many reasons that we should be looking at diversity in many different ways. And so many of those programs were founded not just for, one group, but for many, many groups that did not have equal access as others. So maybe trying to pick a specific example and then showing, now like that now we're going back against that. I don't think people see what they're going against. I think they are looking at it with either blinders or they're just hearing the words and they're thinking, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah, my white granddaughter didn't get into college, I'm sure that was DEI. So they're looking at this one little narrow thing. And as much as I would say, yeah, well, she's probably had other privileges that a lot of people didn't have, I could have that conversation, but that doesn't seem to work. But maybe focusing on, one aspect of why something was initially created and now it's being taken away will look different to people. Just a thought.
I think that's a great idea, Jody. The education titles are a good example. Um, Title I, which was really created because of the inequity of education to poor children, rural poor children, I mean, wherever they were. And then if we think back on it, look at what's happened in women's sports recently, where women's talents are out there shining. I mean, outplaying men in different fields, basketball and all. That wouldn't exist today, in my opinion, if the title didn't exist that said you had to spend equitably on women's sports opportunities and education. And we still haven't gotten there yet, but even what we have spent has made such a tremendous difference. But so people who are parents of girls and young women, um, think about none of those opportunities existing because all the focus was being put on boys' athletics and so little on women. And you could go on down the line. Just every one of those things was there to correct something that wasn't happening for a significant population, people with disabilities.
And some of it may be as easy as defining what is meant by equity and give some examples. And there's such three beautiful words: diversity,
Mhm.
equity, and inclusion. It's like,
But they don't understand it. They think it has to do with something that
exactly.
that is illegal, like hiring people because of their race. That's actually illegal. And I mean, even Al Pareco over here, he's the one, he posted something. I don't know if you can hear what I'm saying, but he posted something on Facebook and it was a list of what DEI really was. And I appreciate that so much because, I made sure that I showed it to people who didn't understand what it was. They thought it was it just had to do with hiring people, because of their race or whatever, which is, of course, illegal. So I really appreciate that, he had that whole list. And I don't know if he shared it with everybody, but it's everything that diversity, equity, and inclusion encompasses. Even your ramps on your sidewalks out there, or even being in a building that's like a no smoking building, or I mean, even having a changing table for babies in a men's room, all of that is DEI and it benefits everybody.
Everybody.
And I don't understand why, why Trump, I mean, I don't think he don't think he knows what he's talking about. He's uneducated.
Can I say something?
Yeah, I think Jones had her hand up for a
Okay.
while, Ray, and then you can
Okay.
go.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe Ray, you and I are going to go in the same direction here, but I think what my concern is that all of these DEI is a big slap, and we know that, and it's very much related to racism. But my concern is that right now we're in a real bind in terms of this bill, and and if we're going to have any kind of impact, I almost think that we need to focus on some aspect of this bill to have people understand what are the implications of this. What are the implications in terms of losing Medicaid? If you can grasp it from a concrete perspective and from a story, Jody, you mentioned stories before. Stories are really important. But I think if we start to go from a broader perspective, theoretical perspective, we're all the same on DEI, but the issue is this bill is potentially going to really cause great damage in this country. And as Ray said, to our church ultimately, because we're not standing up. So I don't know if Ray, that's where you were going to go
Yeah,
with this.
exactly. I don't want to be the gloom guy here, but I don't think we have much time.
I don't either.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the U.S. Catholic bishops putting together, if you read what came out today, the 6 or 7 pages, and also the letter to the senators and things like that, they now have the message. They're sending it to the wrong people. They're sending it to the House of Representatives and things like that. They're bishops. They should send it to their people and ask their people to put this into action.
Right.
And tell them about the big, beautiful bill and about how it's going to destroy the poor and vulnerable and things like that. The bishops should be in charge of priests. They should be telling the priests what to do, not, just thinking all these glory things to do and send it to the Senate and speak out on this. They got the message. I think they got the message because I think Leo 14th is there with them. They get the message. This is what he wants done, but they got the wrong place to place it on. They got to place it with the parishioners in the churches and things like that. Change their minds, and they
Yeah.
got enough here to change their minds. If only the bishops get the priests to get up in the pulpits and say this.
To
Maybe
mobilize,
that's what we should tell them.
Now, not later, because it's
No,
not going to be later.
right. And to mobilize the people then. I mean, it's the same principle with why are these protests? They need to grow because we're not going to have any impact if they don't continue to grow. It's the same principle here,
Amen.
I think.
So
So we
why don't
send
we
a letter
send
to
that
US
letter to the bishops?
Yeah, U.S. Catholic bishops saying, "Okay, we got your message. Now sending it to the parishes and things like that." And that's our message should
And
be.
the Senate too. I mean,
And individual parishes are going to get this letter.
right.
They don't need to read more. They need to be told more by bishops. That's what bishops are for.
Mobilize your diocese.
Mobilize your diocese.
Right.
But like I said, we don't have a lot of people in the pews anymore either. So I think they need to go beyond that too.
Well, the press will pick it up.
Yeah.
It's true.
I think we should get the press involved.
Mobilize.
Well, and I wonder if, we saw some signs of mobilizing with that bishop who's now saying to his priests, go with the people to the hearings. I don't know how many that's affecting, but at least that's some concrete action.
Amen. Amen.
And that
Yeah.
should show up, if they don't get all arrested, as we saw this week with somebody else. But it's stuff like that needs to be more concrete, I think, with action.
And Joan, when something unjust happens, like they're getting arrested happens, that's what angers people into action.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've done that to my priest.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's what happened in New York yesterday, right? With that one person that's been going and he got arrested. Well, it does raise some awareness.
Yeah.
And
And
that senator who they
can do so wearing a mask. They come up wearing a mask and say they're a law and order.
Yeah, that's unbelievable to me.
Unbelievable.
Well, as someone said, they may not even be U.S.
Yeah.
officials. They might be
Right.
part of the January 6th group pitching in, the Proud Boys.
Right.
That's true.
So, anybody willing to work on this letter? Jerry Filkowski said she would also, but she couldn't come tonight.
I sent a similar letter to Archbishop Laurie. I'll be glad to work on it. I'll send my letter out to you all after the
Okay.
We can take
I'll
it
be
from-
happy to work on it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will too. So,
All right. I will let Jerry know also, because as you said, this is like a now issue.
right.
right. We're in a mess.
Yeah.
Is your parish
Mhm.
all with it? So it doesn't help to put something in your bulletins or newsletter or whatever.
I don't
St.
think it
Leo's,
hurts.
We're going to be a combined parish shortly.
Well,
and I'm
that's
not
true.
sure St. Leo's is quite as awake about some of these issues. And I mean, we talked about maybe starting this program there, going back to like their town hall and
Yeah.
getting some of those things to just educate people, because I was stupid about all this stuff. So
Do you think, I have no idea, but do you think like opening this to the people of St. Leo's or trying to bring them on board with this by some weird regulation has to go through Father Evan? Because we don't have
Well,
time,
we
we don't have
talked-
time for that.
Well, not to get them up to speed and where this parish is, but I, I don't know, to for the letter, I don't think we need to.
Wow.
And that's what needs to go out immediately. I mean, Skip and I already talked about talking to Father Evan about this group and
Okay.
what we'd like to do with St. Leo's to
Okay.
try to present something also. But yeah, we can't do that yet anyway, because it's not July 1st and we can't wait. So
Peggy,
did that answer the question?
do they have a peace and justice committee or something like that?
No, I met with the woman who does some things. They don't call it peace and justice. I can't remember now. It was a while back. But she takes care of, like, they make sandwiches for I think our daily bread, and so they do some things, but they don't have the ministries that we do.
Okay.
All right.
I think when we get to the point of educating, though, with them, I didn't have any understanding of this either.
I
Okay.
didn't either.
And so
That's how we
therefore,
got
an understanding of this goes back to 1891, right? And in terms of the principles are there. And to really understand that that's what popes have been calling us to do. Somehow people have to realize that.
Mm.
We were going to start even before that about the church's complicity with the papal bulls and the race and the slavery and having
Amen.
enslaved people, so we were going to start, because I was totally ignorant
1400.
also. So yeah. So anyway,
I was too.
that'll be a little down the road. But
Yeah.
you all are probably getting the same things I am. I got something today which said 5 actions you can take right now to fight back against the Republican tax scam. And it's call your senator, or send a letter to your senator, conduct a drop-in visit to your senator. Of course, our senators. Anybody have connections for the Eastern Shore? That one guy?
Andy
No,
Harris,
Harris, but he's
Yeah.
Yeah.
he's
So,
beyond convincing,
yeah,
unfortunately.
He's
so
not a senator, is he?
He's
Yeah.
the
He's the
representative.
Representative, yeah.
representative.
Yeah.
I
Don't
didn't
forget
know if
Andy
they had any
Harris.
senators.
You're never gonna, what are you gonna sit on top of him
Yeah.
and choke him? You're never gonna get
No, but
him.
Don't lose time
Oh,
on him.
I
and
didn't
remember,
know if
he's
any
A
of
been
the
waste of
senators.
reelected
time.
several times by his constituency, so that tells you he's not going to change. It's the
Nah.
I
Eastern.
think I saw he was upset about his constituency with the protests on Saturday in Cambridge or something.
They're
Good.
Trump country. When we drive to the Eastern Shore to go to the beach and everything, you still have these gigantic Trump advance signs everywhere and the American flag waving and all that. So it's a little bit, different down there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even up here, Jerry, if you go beyond Carroll County, you're basically in Trump country and parts of Carroll County. Matter of fact, I can go
Yeah.
down near Security Boulevard and Rolling Road, and if I turn off and try to come home up one of those streets through a golf course, immediately, I mean, right off of Rolling Road and Security Boulevard, I see Trump signs, Trump signs, Trump
I'm
signs.
surprised.
So
Yeah, I think
Baltimore
all the
County.
little outlying county, like Cecil is another one. And
Oh yeah.
probably out in the mountains like Allegheny and Cumberland, places like that. You have a
Yes.
lot of
Everybody
that.
has connections for the Maryland senators and reps that are not, because we got quite a few Republicans. I mean,
Well,
send some to them. But before I forget, the community cleanup, South Baltimore Community Land Trust, they're having a cleanup Friday, this coming Friday, June 20th, from 2:30 to 7. It's a drop-in if you can help clean up. Would anybody be interested? Sue Woodman said she wants to go. She wanted to know if anybody else would want to go, and she would join up with them. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention. Let me know if you decide you would like to do that, because a lot of people are involved in Friday night dinner, so not available. So,
Yeah, we're
anyway.
getting ready for the concert Friday night, so.
Yeah. All right, and anything else we want to put on the letters, the most imminent? Thank you very much, Jerry DeLumbo, Ray, Jerry Filkowski, and Joan for volunteering. And kudos to Joan for the wonderful PowerPoint.
Thank you,
It
Joan.
was just
Thank
you.
Thank
really,
you so much,
Thank
Joan.
you.
really
Thanks.
appreciate it. It was
Thank you.
it's a great
Joan,
job.
Joan, I just want to, one of the things that intrigued me on your PowerPoint was that King Leopold threw Pope Leo out.
Mhm.
And if you all know anything about Leopold of Belgium, he was just so white supremacist driven in terms of colonizing Africa and the
Yeah.
atrocities that he committed in the name of his white economy, and the cost in human lives was just, and if Leo was at all putting out those kinds of "but that's wrong" vibes while he was in Belgium, he would have gotten thrown out on his ear, because that guy was terrible.
Yeah. Interesting.
Remember, in our lifetime, it was the Belgian Congo, and that was just
Exactly.
one of the African
Yeah.
Hmm.
properties. I mean, land 50 times larger than Belgium.
And
I
that
have
was him. I'm sorry.
No, I just have a question about your combining with St. Leo. So my parish combined with another parish, and we're a collaborative now. We have one bulletin. So I was just wondering if you know what's happening with that, because we could be thinking of putting little stories in the bulletin.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
I don't know yet.
They're meeting to discuss all kinds of stuff, so we don't know yet.
Well, if that would be the case, that would be some things that we could think about.
Yeah, definitely.
There is some sharing, okay, with regard to publications. So, when you have your article ready to go, which has to be done by Wednesday, uh,
To
I
put it
think is
in
the
the bulletin.
deadline. You might suggest or send it to Colleen and say, with your connections over at St. Leo's, would this be a possible? You have to say it to send it to Matt, I guess, but I would do Matt and CC Colleen and just say, is there any possibility of communicating this to St. Leo's?
Well, I put in the community solar because I'm having an event there Sunday, and I put it in their bulletin, and he's announcing it. The Father Amato's announcing it, and I dropped off flyers. So, I mean, we can do anything. We don't have to really clear it with anybody either. If we
No,
like something in there, we can contact them.
yes,
So, but yeah,
thank you.
that's a good idea.
And maybe everybody start thinking of one piece of the beautiful bill that you can tie back to some historical reference of why it started, or a story, a poignant story of what would happen because of this or something. And maybe just initially we could get a couple of those in even.
Yeah.
And I think that might be the way to start. I was just thinking, remember, I know I was ignorant as all get out. We're in our fourth year of this, and I have learned so much through the people I'm looking at on the screen. But 4 years, you can't cram that into, but if you're going with a Catholic social teaching, Rerum Novarum, the big beautiful, that to me would be a pretty good and not so frightening way to begin to share some of what we've learned with our sisters and brothers at St. Leo, especially if we feel that they're not where we are, because I'm sure some of them just see us as woke.
Well, another thought, for that Catholic social teaching, the 7 tenets, that sheet
Yeah.
and so I added, for my group, I added a introduction that was why Pope Leo the 14th, one of the reasons that he chose the name, and put that at the top. And we're going to put that in our bulletin.
Good.
So
Mhm.
I'm thinking that could be something that you could pass out at St. Leo's, because you can't read those and think what's going on is okay. I mean, every single
No,
one, the option for the poor, the, workers' right, every single one, the climate. I mean,
Send that
so,
to me, Jody, the one that you
okay.
added that plus we
yeah,
remember we took out the abortion piece. She
Well,
added it back in to pull people in that way.
yeah, actually, if I could pull it up, we could share this. Oh, I could just send it to all of you if you want the document. But I did add back in the way the pro-life would word, like from conception to natural death, and the way that the USCCB words it.
Wait,
I
Jody,
have
send
that
it to me
back.
because I'm going to send out the slideshow
Okay.
if it's okay with Joan, and I'll send them both out to this
Okay.
group.
So let me send you the one the newest one as
Yeah,
of
that'd be
today.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other thought that I had is I really believe the importance of history, right? In terms of understanding where we've been and how do we move forward. Well, in this case, it seems to me that that's the reason we did today, was to understand Rerum Novarum, but an understanding of the civil rights, how that got to where it got, I think for me would be really an important piece in terms of the steps. How do we keep progressing and moving this? Because that was a movement. Yeah.
And we went backwards now. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that was mentioned in that Georgetown University was that there was a strong surge among every race when George Floyd happened to, like, think, wow, this shouldn't be happening. And then they were saying COVID hit and kind of everybody went back. And then by the time we came out of COVID, that surge, that whole really dynamic was gone. And that was a shame. But
Remember in the civil rights movement, people had different opinions about Dr. King, and you had the FBI trying to smear him and all of that. What really galvanized the country was when they saw the pictures of the police dogs being sick on kids and the fire hoses being turned. And that's when they said, basically, people went, no, this is not who we are. But that galvanized the country to really maybe open up and start really thinking about what's going on here.
And that's sort of where we are with the
We're seeing it.
deportation right now. Those are the
Yes.
scenes that we're seeing that are disgusting and that make us sick.
and even just seeing the
Yes.
Yes.
Marines
Yes.
walking our protest.
Or to see
Yes.
these legislators that were put down on the ground. I mean,
Yeah.
Skip, I see
Hi.
where Skip,
Um,
I see where a couple of the
Yes, this is what we
days
got to galvanize from.
Skip, can you hear me? I see where some of the Juneteenth days have
I
been
hear you.
canceled this year, and I just wonder whether or not you know some of these things are put on the back burner and the like, and we'll end up at our governor in terms of reparations and things like that. They're too hot to handle in with everything's going on and the like. But I was surprised to see two of the Juneteenth days canceled this year.
Wow.
Where
Well, it'll be
in,
interesting to see what Trump
I don't know.
does
I
with.
saw in the paper, and I didn't know exactly where, but
so just you guys, Katie's doing the final prayer. I'm sorry, Kathy Younkin's doing the final prayer. I didn't know if anybody needed to get off. Sorry. I was thinking Katie has to work tomorrow, so I didn't know if she wanted to hear the final prayer before she and I wanted to wish her a happy birthday from Monday.
Oh, happy
Katie,
birthday.
Katie's
happy
birthday.
birthday.
So
Katie.
sorry, I knew Kathy was doing the prayer, but it was Katie's birthday. Sorry. So we can do the prayer if you don't mind, Kathy, and then if people want to stay on, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, this came from St. Oscar Romero. The ones who have a voice must speak for those who are voiceless. Aspire not to have more, but to be more. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of freedom in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. When the church hears the cry of the oppressed, it cannot but denounce the social structures that give rise to perpetuate the misery from which the cry arises. Amen.
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 I would
Amen.
love that prayer.
You-
That's gonna be a good way to
Perfect,
start our thing for the bulletin.
perfect, perfect. Thank you.
Really is.
I love that prayer.
So good.
Mm.
Okay.
All right, if anybody has to leave, feel free. Thank you all so much, and
Thank you all.
Thank you.
probably do.
Great
Oh, are we meeting
discussion,
in,
great
So we'll
discussion.
probably work by email for a while because Jody and I are leaving for a couple weeks, so to go home. So we will not meet in
July?
Right.
July. But I already scheduled it for the third Wednesday of August, so
Okay.
But we need to
we'll
get on
get the
these
letter
things
out before
fast.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But we'll
We can
be,
do some email. Well, yeah.
Isn't Trump pushing on them to have that passed or voted on by July 4th?
I don't know that.
I thought it was the end of the summer.
Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah.
it's July 4th, but I think that's wishful thinking.
I think so
Yeah.
too, but
I
yeah,
hope so.
That
Our
He's got
work
too
we
much
need
on
to
his
get
plate
it
right
out.
now.
Yeah.
thank you all.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank
I
you,
need to-
everyone.
Yes,
Sorry.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Joan.
all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
I'm gonna
Bye.
stop
You
the
guys.
recording in case anybody